to Soul Sparks, where what's hidden beneath the surface finally gets to speak. I'm your host, Saima, and today's guest is our amazing Zoe, therapist, coach, and founder of Mastermind Counseling, who works with high functioning adults who seem fine but are quietly fighting anxiety, ADHD, and burnout behind the scenes. And Zoe's mission is to turn the silent struggle into empowered self leadership. So, if you have ever felt unseen in your overwhelm, this conversation is your permission slip to take your power back. Zoe, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and have a great chat.
You're warmly welcome, Zoe. It's my pleasure to have you here. So, Zoe, you specialize in working with people who seem high functioning but feel like they're quietly falling apart. So, can you share some signs that others and even ourselves tend to overlook?
Absolutely. So, a lot of times by the time my client has come to me, because oftentimes people wait until they're symptomatic to get help, um, they might be experiencing anxiety, depression, or symptoms of burnout, which might look like irritability, anger, sleeplessness, feeling moody during their day, and have a hard time kind of explaining why that might be. They're high functioning on the outside. They're taking care of all the things that they need to take care of at work. They're meeting their demands. They're taking care of their families and their spouses, and a lot of times, even their parents, too. Many of the clients that come to me are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, and they are at a point in their life where their parents need some care. So they're juggling it all, uh, but they have forgotten how to prioritize themselves in the process.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's such an important perspective, Zoe. I mean, like, thank you for naming those patterns so clearly. Like, so many of us miss them in ourselves and others. I think a lot of people are going to feel incredibly seen by what you have just shared.
I hope so. Yeah, it's people are overworking themselves. They're overdoing it and not realizing it. And on top of all the things that I mentioned, a lot of times people are also silently carrying the weight of other people's emotions as well, worrying about
Mhm.
how the people around them feel, worried about how they might respond or react to something that they say or do. And that's a big burden.
Absolutely, yes, yes. And that invisible suffering is so real. It's really hard to heal what you're still denying even exists. I feel that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I mentioned before, by the time the client has come to me, oftentimes anyway, they're already quite symptomatic. So they're coming in because of the symptom. But our job together in our time in therapy or coaching is to start to unravel that little by little, right? The problem isn't really the symptom. The problem is well, it's multifaceted, right? It's our actions throughout the day that might not be aligning with who we really want to be,
Mm-hmm.
or with the life that we want to have, or it's our thoughts, right? Like thinking very negatively or irrationally, right? Sometimes we think things that aren't even true because we're so worried. So little by little, we unravel what is actually happening, in the person's mind and in their environment. And of course, their own behaviors, their relationships are a huge factor as well. So they come in for the symptom, but the work is to really take a closer look at a variety of things happening for them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That makes sense. Now, like, this question is arising in my mind now. Like, why do these individuals are often like, you know, they don't want to seek help?
Hmm. Yeah, I
Like, why
know. It's a great,
why they often the last to seek help?
yeah. So I think like listen, I think across the board, we're starting to do a better job of reducing the stigma and helping people understand that mental health is health, right? Mind and body are one. So it's not catastrophic to admit that you're having a hard time with your emotions or your behaviors. And so slowly but surely we're reducing that stigma, but some of that stigma does still remain, unfortunately, where people are concerned that if they need therapy or medication, that that means something bad about them. Does that mean that I'm crazy? Does that mean that I'm losing my mind? That sort of thing. And so hopefully over time we with, great conversations like these, we can continue to reduce the stigma. So that's one big thing is there's a stigma attached to mental health challenges. And then the other part of it, I think for many people, we've got a 2-point issue here. We've got um, access. So for some people, finding a therapist in their area can be really challenging. Um, and and the other part of access is cost for care. So for many fortunate people, they have insurance that can help them access care and help them to afford the care. And but for others, they either don't have insurance, unfortunately, or if they do have insurance, their insurance doesn't cover therapy. And then what they're left with is a high cost for care. Um, Insurance companies, especially in the United States, also don't reimburse very, very well for therapists. And so that's another issue. And that makes therapists not want to accept insurance, right? So I think there's a few reasons why people hold off as long as they can. Um, and I have found that a lot of times people will just sort of um, struggle in silence, right? They think to themselves, I can do this, I can deal with this, I can figure it out. And then time passes, and the symptoms get worse. And that's when they really, really need to talk to somebody.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That makes sense. And what you said really brings light to something we often overlook. And there's so much value in hearing it named so clearly. Like it creates space for more self awareness and maybe even a little more compassion, self compassion, I must say. I really appreciate the way you like unpack that with both clarity and care.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we never really know what silent struggles somebody's experiencing. Somebody
Mm-hmm.
can be walking down the street and look healthy and beautiful and well dressed. Maybe they're off to work. Maybe they're driving a nice car. It doesn't matter. We really don't know what that person is experiencing in their mind, in their body, in their household. And so being empathetic and kind to other humans really does go a very long way. It's free to be kind. It's free to say, have a great day. Um, Hello
Mm-hmm.
even is, a good start. So yeah, absolutely. I think having compassion for others and for sure 100% having grace, understanding, and compassion for yourself is a starting point. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That 100%. Now, you work with both therapy and coaching. So I'm really curious to know that where do you see the line between healing the past and empowering the present?
Yeah. So my style of therapy is a very here and now sort of approach. So, what I mean by that is it is important for us to look at all aspects of life, of course. And part of our lives that we do carry around with us is our past experiences, because even though it's done, the past is over, we can't reach it anymore. It is still accessible in our memories. And if we think about what memories actually are, they're thoughts. And our thoughts very much affect how we feel in the here and now. So, yes, I do have conversations with clients about past events, family history, things of that nature. And we talk about them. But then what we do with that information is connect the dots to the present moment. Okay, so we can say, oh, this is why certain things are happening for you now because the past is affecting you. Let's continue to process that. Let's see if we can heal some of those old injuries, so to speak. But then the question that is imperative, or the questions, multiple, is to come back to the present moment and say, okay, we now know this information. We have a missing piece of the puzzle. What do we do now? How do we do it? And when can we start? Right? Can we start right now to take steps forward in a better, healthier direction? What does that look like? So yes, we touch on the past, we bring it into the here and now, and then we move forward. And that's where we can really start to see some healing as we choose better patterns for ourselves in the here and now.
Mm-hmm. I really love how you spoke the fluid relationship between healing and growth, Zoe. Like, so often people think they have to be completely healed before they can move forward. But the way you explain it shows that, healing the past and empowering the present can actually happen side by side. And it's such a practical way to look at personal development. And I think that's going to land deeply with a lot of listeners, especially those who are, navigating the exact space of doing the work while still trying to show up fully in their lives. Really beautifully said, Zoe.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think we want to feel, well, we can't go back in time and fix what happened. We can certainly think about the past events in a stronger way, in a survivor mindset, and create a narrative that is healthier. So, yes, I think side by side, we can work on healing, but also propel forward in a way that feels much better.
Hmm. Yes, that clarity is freeing. Now, let's talk about ADHD in adults. So, it's often
Yes.
misunderstood, let's be honest. So, like, how can it mask as something else in people's lives?
Oh, yeah. Adult ADHD truly is fascinating, and it's important when a client comes in and they are, sometimes they suspect ADHD, sometimes they don't. Sometimes, we need to have a few sessions before I can kind of see that maybe they are experiencing that. It's important for the clinician to get as accurate a picture as possible. To assess, right? We do little assessments to do assessments for depression, anxiety, and ADHD, and kind of compare the results and see between the client's report and also the assessments if we can get a better picture of what's going on. But um, 80 true adult ADHD can often present itself as what we refer to sometimes as motivation dysregulation. So a client comes in and they're having such a hard time tending to the daily tasks that they need to do. The desire is there. They want to do it, right? People really do want to succeed in their everyday life. They really, who doesn't want that? But when they start to fall short on fulfilling their roles at home or at work, it can be really upsetting, right? And so I tend to refer to it as a trifecta. Somebody comes in with adult ADHD, but they're also experiencing anxiety or depression. And so these three things can be kind of happening simultaneously. And the reason is because the ADHD is causing such a hard time with task completion, project completion. Motivation is dysregulated. Um, and it really does affect relationships in the workplace, in the school place, and a personal relationship with yourself, right? Um, so yeah, ADHD really is fascinating and misunderstood and often judged harshly.
Mm-hmm. That explains so much. It's really wild how ADHD can show up in ways people don't expect. And the way you
Mhm.
broke that down makes it like so much easier to understand like why so many adults miss it or mislabel it as something else like anxiety or just being scatterbrained. And I'm sure that there may be a lot of people going to hear your words and feel like this huge sense of relief, like, oh, that might be me. And thank you for
Mhm.
shedding light on that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. ADHD has it can come with a lot of co-occurring issues. So it really is important if you suspect that that might be what is going on. If you were never diagnosed as a child and you're just noticing it now, please go chat with a therapist that specializes in ADHD. Go have a chat with a neurologist or a psychiatrist. See if medication is appropriate for you. It really can come with so many challenges that with the right care, with the right strategy, can we can really get symptoms down a bit. We can never get rid of bring you down to zero. Um, because it is a neurogenetic disorder, there are brain differences for sure, but we can help get symptoms under control.
Mm-hmm. So, can you share some everyday strategies you share to help manage focus and overwhelm without shame?
Yeah, yeah. So, when a client comes to me and we have definitely figured out there's ADHD, now it's time to get the story, right? Where are you having the hardest time? So, for most people, for most adults with ADHD, now just a little bit of backstory here is it's important to remember, like I said a moment ago, that there are brain differences. So, the prefrontal cortex is a little sleepy, um, with ADHD, and we also have some of the neurotransmitters, some of the chemicals are also dysregulated as well. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for executive functioning, things like time management, prioritization, organization, working memory, and lots more. So, it's important to understand where the client is having the hardest time. And oftentimes it is their time management, their prioritization, and their organization, right? So, what we do is we want to make time feel more concrete for that person because with ADHD, there can be something called time blindness, right? They don't necessarily experience time in the same way that a neurotypical person does. Um, so, some of the strategies that we put in place are um, time management techniques. So, one, make sure that you have clocks in your rooms, whether it's at your desk at work or in your house, make sure there are clocks. Wear a watch, right? So now we're starting to I use the language, we're pushing time in, meaning we're just making it feel more real. So we're using clocks. And then the next level is to start figuring out what are the tools that I like to keep track of the things that I have to do. So for me personally, I am a neurotypical person, but I still really like being able to manage my time. So I have clocks in every room and I use a planner. I love my planner. I have one for every year. So I encourage people to find the method that works for them, whether it's a planner, a calendar, the calendar on their phone, an app like Timo or Structured, that can help them balance their time. Some clients choose to get like whiteboards that they can write on in the room that they're in the most, maybe the kitchen or the bedroom, whatever it might be. So we start to implement time techniques as an initial stage of strategy.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting to hear you frame time that way, Zoe. Like, especially the idea of pushing time in. There's something
Mhm.
almost countercultural about that, in a world that's always telling us to push ourselves outward to do more, be faster, and start busy. But the way you described it, it feels like less about control and more about alignment, honestly. And that's a powerful shift. Like, especially for people living in constant states of overwhelm. That's a powerful shift.
Yeah, it really can be. I mean, I've seen it firsthand where, for some clients, all we had to do was find the thing, the time technique that worked for them, whether it's a running list on a notepad or, the whiteboard in their room and life suddenly feels a little bit lighter because we're taking our brain and we're putting it on the outside via the planner or the to-do list or whatever it is, right? And we're basically saying, I accept, right? I have radical acceptance over the fact that my brain has a hard time with these things and I need an aid, so to speak. I need a little aid in this department. and we just make time and our responsibilities feel more present. um time blindness can be so challenging, especially for the person that might be, in university or college, and they have so many
Mm-hmm.
expectations on them. So, for somebody that's neurotypical, if they get a project assigned to them, next Friday, they might be able to use their working memory to keep track of all the things that they have to do between now and then. Maybe a rough draft, maybe an outline, maybe resources and citations, right? But for somebody with ADHD, that next Friday doesn't really feel very real yet. So that's why oftentimes the person with ADHD maybe is working on the project the night before, because now the pressure of time is on them. And so that's why on the outside, there's become so much stigma of, oh gosh, that person's a procrastinator or they're just lazy. And it's fundamentally not true. They're not a procrastinator and they're not lazy. Their brain operates different. So we have to teach them how to work with it instead of against it, basically.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's a game changer, yes. Now, boundaries and relationships, often clash for people with anxiety or people pleasing habits. So,
Yep.
how can, someone set boundaries without feeling selfish or guilty?
Yes. So one of my favorite topics. When a person starts to realize that what is actually causing them anxiety is the people pleasing, is the poor boundaries, then we can start to make interpersonal changes, right? So when you point out to a client that they're anticipating the emotional needs of someone else, I mean, think about what anxiety really is. You're in anticipation of something happening, something not good, usually, right? So when you're sitting in anticipation of another person's emotional needs, that might sound something like, I if I'm scared if I say this or do that, that the other person might be angry, upset, sad. When you realize that that anticipation is the thing that's causing you anxiety, and you're holding the other person's emotions as a boundary on your own back, now we can start to make changes, because we can't make a change without awareness, right? Awareness has to come first. So then we slowly but surely start to offer the person a practical way of implementing boundaries, like realizing that they are enough as they are today, right? I am enough as I am today. I don't have to do extra, extra, extra all the time just for another person. I'm allowed to say no. I'm allowed to let another person be angry or upset with me. I'm allowed to have another person not always agree with me. And that might feel uncomfortable for me at first, but it's going to be okay, because the people that truly love me, the people that won't abandon me, are going to stick around, even if they're a little upset with me. So boundaries can be so life changing and really reduce someone's anxiety. And yes, there can be guilt at first because you're not used to setting boundaries. But over time, your brain starts to recognize that there isn't danger here. There isn't harm here. You're protecting yourself, really.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, that really makes sense when you see it like that. And it's actually so funny how we think that we are avoiding discomfort by not setting boundaries, but we end up carrying way more stress in the long run. And that people pleasing habit can feel so automatic, like, it's just part of being nice or keeping the peace. But meanwhile, we are the ones feeling drained. And the way you explained it kind of flips the whole guilt piece on its head. Like it's not selfish,
Mhm.
it's survival, it's self respect. And that really hit.
Yes. I like to think of therapy as a journey towards regaining and reclaiming peace in our minds, body, spirit, in our heart, whatever you want to call it, right? It's a journey
Mm-hmm.
towards getting our peace back. And what better way to reclaim your peace than having interpersonal relationships that are respectful, and that are have reciprocity. There's a mutual back and forth, right? You're not the only one giving and giving and giving. So
Mm-hmm.
when we recognize that all we really needed to do was have stronger boundaries and then allow people to have the response that they're going to have, because we can't control someone else's emotions, we really start to feel more at peace on the inside. And what better feeling than that?
Yes, yes. That mindset shift from boundaries being walls to being bridges is everything. Yes.
Yes,
Now,
absolutely.
you, yes, absolutely. Like, you mentioned positive thinking, but not the toxic positivity kind. So, can you share one reframe you use often that helps people shift into possibility while staying grounded?
hmm Yeah. Positive thinking is huge, right? But we also don't want to be lying to ourselves because that doesn't feel good at all. And so I do teach clients how to reframe in a way that feels more neutral to positive. It doesn't always have to be rainbows and sunshine. And so one that comes up, one reframe that comes up often for me and my clients is in this moment, I am okay. In this moment, I am safe. Because with anxiety, especially, anxiety likes to tell us that there's a huge risk in front of us, right? Like there's a bear coming to get us, a lion coming to get us. And there often is not. The risk isn't as risky as what our brain is making it out to be. So reminding your brain and your nervous system in this moment, I am okay. In this moment, I am safe, is a great way to just come back down to the present moment and recognize that even though something isn't ideal in that moment, that you really are okay, and that you're safe, which is the most important thing, that you are safe.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's such a simple but powerful shift. And it's amazing that how something as gentle as, like what you said, reminding
Mhm.
ourselves that we are okay right now and we are safe right now can bring us back from, spiraling into what ifs or overwhelm. And that kind of grounding doesn't deny what's hard, but it creates just enough space to breathe. And that really speaks to the power of presence, Zoe.
Yes, I love it. It's one of my favorites. I provide that reframe to most of my clients. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. Zoe, thank you for lighting the way for so many who feel unseen in their daily struggles. And to everyone listening out there, your outer strength doesn't mean your inner world doesn't need care. Healing isn't weakness, and boundaries aren't betrayal. And thriving doesn't mean hiding the hard parts. So you're allowed to own your own story and take up space and build a life that feels just as good as it looks. So start now.